Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You're watching NBC News Now. Here's what's happening.
He said he was lonely. He said he was looking for a girlfriend. He was propositioning me for sex.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's accuser speaking out while he defiantly denies accusations of sexual misconduct. The latest calls for Cuomo to resign, plus could a criminal case or impeachment be on the horizon? Headed for full approval. New reports that the FDA hopes to fully approve Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine as early as next month as the Delta variant rages across the country, especially in the South.
I know that every single time the two of us step on the track, it's going to be something fast. So you're always prepared for it. And it's just one of those special moments that you really can't plan for.
A 1-2 finish in Tokyo, gold, and a new world record for American Sydney McLaughlin. We've got a wrap-up of all the Olympic action, including more from Simone Biles. We start this hour with the latest Cuomo fallout. NBC News senior national correspondent Kate Snow has reaction from his accusers.
Cuomo accuser Charlotte Bennett says calling for the governor's resignation is no longer enough.
We should impeach the governor because he clearly cannot accept responsibility for any of his behavior.
Bennett was 23 when she joined the governor's office, then handpicked by Cuomo to be his assistant. She shared with him that she was a sexual assault survivor, but says an initially positive relationship became inappropriate.
He started asking questions about, my sex life and if I was monogamous and if I could have a healthy sexual relationship.
What did you think his intent was?
He said he was lonely. He said he was looking for a girlfriend. He was propositioning me for sex.
In a recorded statement Tuesday, Cuomo continued to dispute the allegations and said Bennett's complaint bothers him most.
I thought I could help her work through a difficult time. I have heard Charlotte and her lawyer. Simply put, they heard things that I just didn't say.
He is victim blaming, and he's also making a really insulting and painfully inaccurate insinuation that someone who is traumatized from a past experience cannot discern the difference between mentorship and sexual harassment.
Attorney Marianne Wong says it was another Cuomo statement in March that prompted her clients to speak out.
I never touched anyone inappropriately.
I think that was a real turning point for my clients. They really felt that he just looked at the camera and made a bold-faced lie.
She represents Alyssa McGrath, who still works for Cuomo and called his behavior inappropriate and creepy, and Virginia Limiatis, who accused Cuomo of running two fingers across her chest as he read a logo on her T-shirt.
She did not know how to react.
This morning, though, the women say they feel empowered.
It's sad that we have to be in this situation, but I'm also just so proud of the 11 of us.
All right, Kate Snow is here with me live now. So, Kate, the New York AG investigation found the governor sexually harassed 11 women. What's the latest on their plans, if any, to potentially take legal action here?
So for the women themselves, so far, no one has filed any criminal complaint that we know of or any civil suit that we know of. But, Allison, just in the last 30, 40 minutes, the New York Times reporting that one of the accusers, Lindsay Boylan, who's named in that AG report, is now considering filing civil suit. She's the one in the report who's identified by the Attorney General as having been retaliated against, illegally retaliated against when she came out with her complaints about Cuomo publicly. She says that then there was retaliation against her. And again, now her lawyer in the New York Times saying that her lawyer is planning to sue.
Kate, the Westchester County DA, the Manhattan DA, both investigating whether any criminal misconduct occurred. In Westchester, the district attorney is looking specifically at information connected to the harassment of a New York State trooper. What can you tell us about that trooper and her case?
Yeah, in Manhattan as well, there's allegations surrounding that trooper. This is a woman who had met Governor Cuomo and then says that she was asked to join his detail, even though she didn't have the requisite experience. She was a young woman. She was brought into his detail. She says over time, he started touching her inappropriately, making inappropriate comments to her. Once touched her on the back in an elevator, another time touched her on the stomach near her private parts. She felt enormously uncomfortable with that. So that is the allegation that's being looked at, as you said, by a couple of these district attorneys. I should also mention that Albany's district attorney is also asking for information from the AG's report, as is one of the counties on Long Island now. So everywhere where these potential alleged crimes happened, you see local district attorneys now looking to see if there might be a criminal case to be made.
All right, Kate Snow, thank you so much for your reporting. Very much appreciate it. All right, let's go to NBC News correspondent for investigations, Tom Winter. Tom, I was just talking with Kate Snow. A growing number of New York prosecutors now investigating. We're talking Albany, Westchester, Manhattan, Nassau County. Right now, they're reviewing the AG's report. What kind of evidence are they requesting here?
Right. So this is an exclusive copy of a letter that we have obtained from the Westchester District Attorney's Office, from the District Attorney there, Mimi Rocha, to the Attorney General's office. And I think a lot of this is following the same pattern. So what they're looking for is something where there's potential behavior that came up in the Attorney General's report, or the independent report that was released by the Attorney General, to be most specific and accurate. They're looking for information that may pertain to their jurisdiction. So in other words, if you're the Westchester County District Attorney, you have no jurisdiction in Buffalo. Whatever the governor may have done there is not of your concern. However, when you look at the Trooper 1, as it's identified as she's identified in the report, and what Kate was just speaking about, the trooper who was pulled off of her previous assignment, brought into the state police detail. They changed the rules to allow her to join that detail. Typically, you need 4 years of experience. She only had 3. They changed the rules at apparently the governor's office request. A lot of that activity occurred, the sexual harassment, perhaps even some of the unwanted touching by the governor in Mount Kisco, New York, which is in Westchester County. So that's the type of thing that these district attorneys are looking for. Based on the report, where did the activity occur? Did it occur in my county and in my jurisdiction? And if so, can I then go after it? Yeah. That's where these investigations stand.
So, Tom, what's the latest from the governor's office? Because he certainly wasn't backing down at all yesterday. Any change today?
Yeah, no change so far at all today. We had heard some rumors that there might have been a press conference scheduled for 11 a.m. That's obviously come and gone, so that's not going to be occurring. I think when we look at this, and we have a statement from the governor's attorney yesterday, they put out an 85-page report, 26 pages of it were statements from Rita Galvin, basically going through woman by woman. There was 11 in total, although they did not address all the women contained in the report, including that state trooper. She was not included in their response, I should say. And then additional 26 pages were pictures of the governor kissing or hugging other people, other politicians, other people, notable people. Same with other politicians hugging other politicians, as if this is just kind of a continual thing, and that should be offered up as evidence. So that's what we saw the governor do yesterday to respond. We haven't heard anything from him today. And it's important to note, Allison, we were not allowed to ask questions of the governor yesterday. So we're going several days here without being able to get our questions answered.
Yeah, good point. That's right, because his address yesterday was recorded, so it didn't exactly offer up open press opportunity to get any more answers there. Tom, lawmakers from the president on down calling on Cuomo to resign. Here's New York State Senator James Skoufis on MTP Daily today.
Everyone's hope is that he resigns, he steps down willingly and spares the state, spares the Democratic Party from an ugly impeachment proceeding. But make no mistake, if he does not step down immediately, and by immediately, I don't mean in a month or a couple weeks, I mean like today or tomorrow, the legislature is prepared to move forward and the votes are there comfortably for impeachment.
The majority of New Yorkers also think Cuomo should resign, Tom. 59%, according to a Marist poll conducted last night. Listen, I don't want to ask you to get into the politics here. I know this isn't the area that you focus on, but I think the one question everyone has is what's next for Cuomo? How can he possibly continue to govern at this stage?
Well, I mean, that is the ultimate question, right? And so in the past, what we've seen the governor do is really be able to dig in, use his extensive New York State phone book. I mean, this is somebody who grew up in the governor's mansion when his father, Mario, was the governor and a legendary governor at that. And so when you look at Andrew Cuomo, he did have a lot of friends, a lot of people in power that he could pick up the phone and call, exert an awful lot of power and influence over the years. And so this is kind of like the dam. And once it cracks and the water comes through, it's very difficult to be able to stop it and get it back together. And I think that's the situation that the governor finds himself in at this point. It would be far easier for us to list the people who have not said the governor should resign than the people who have said that he should resign. Yeah. And I think at this point, his ability to pick up the phone and say, you know what, if you vote for my impeachment, or if you come out and say that I'm going to resign, I'm going to go after this project, or I'm not going to get this bill passed, or I'm going to sideline you. I think that influence that he would have before in that kind of very tough, toxic environment that's laid out in the Attorney General's report, it appears at this point that that's crumbling. On the other hand, there's nothing that says he has to resign and he could wait till impeachment. I think we're just going to have to see how the next couple of days and hours here play out, Allison.
Tom, it's the one thing you just keep hearing New Yorker after New Yorker say. He has been in politics for a long time. The Cuomos are a household name here in New York. Not one person raising their hand to say, I'm coming to the governor's defense, speaking out on his behalf. When you look at that list, like you said, of all the people within his own party who have said he's got to go, it is really something to see. Tom Winter, thank you so much for your reporting today. Appreciate it.
Sure, Allison.
In Florida, the number of kids in the hospital with COVID spiking. Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in Hollywood had 240 COVID patients in July, up from just 23 the month before. In spite of that, school districts in the state now saying they won't require students to wear masks. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders is in Hollywood, Florida, with more.
Allison, the COVID rates are rising in Florida on a very steep curve, and indications are it is not slowing down. President Biden addressing directly the states that he believes that are doing little, specifically the governors who he say are not doing what they could do to prevent this steep climb, including Florida. First, let's listen to President Joe Biden.
I say to these governors, please help. But if you aren't going to help, at least get out of the way.
Today, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis responding directly to the president at a news conference in Panama City.
I just want to say something quickly. Joe Biden has taken to himself to try to single out Florida over COVID. This is a guy who ran for president saying he was going to, quote, shut down the virus. And what has he done? He's imported more virus from around the world by having a wide open southern border.
I'm in Broward County, Florida. You can see over my shoulder the Memorial Healthcare sign. That is because they held a news conference here just a short time ago talking about the increased number of COVID patients. About 33%, that is 537 of the patients that are at the hospital system now have coronavirus. In fact, it is quickly getting towards a record number of COVID patients. One of the things that the team here would not directly respond to is the governor again saying that the attention on Florida, the rising numbers, that attention is all hype. In fact, the governor called it media hype. Listen to what he had to say.
Even in places that have more, COVID patients represent a fraction of the overall hospital beds. And so I don't want to see a repeat because of some of the media hysteria where people who have heart problems or stroke are not going in to get care.
So I put that question directly to the chief medical officer here, Mark Knapp, asking, is it media hype?
I really can't respond to the governor per se. I mean, the governor's perspective on this is the governor's. I can tell you what we are seeing in the hospital.
Is it hype?
I can tell you what we are seeing in the hospital, and that the numbers of patients are unprecedented. And that's in black and white. We have more patients in our hospital now than ever before.
So as we look at the numbers and everything that's unfolding right now, the real reality is there is growing concern that the crisis that we had seen last year is back again. The pandemic is not slowing down, and that Florida is directly in the crosshairs. Allison?
Wuhan testing its entire population for COVID. That's 11 million people. China now battling its worst COVID outbreak in more than a year. NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Freyer has the latest from Beijing.
Allison, when we talk about this being the worst outbreak since the beginning of the pandemic, we're not talking huge numbers of cases, at least not officially. It's the geographic spread of this outbreak, as well as the infectious Delta variant that's triggering restrictions right across the country. For example, here in Beijing, travel in and out of the city has been cut to any of the areas that have been affected. In Shanghai, they've imposed a 14-day quarantine for anyone who's traveling from or even going through what's been designated a high-risk zone. And in Wuhan, they're testing 11 million people, the entire city. Officials there say they've prepared 31,000 rooms for quarantine, and already 26,000 of them are said to be in use. Travel in and out of China is also being restricted, with immigration officials announcing they're temporarily suspending issuing travel documents. Now, none of these measures are exactly new. They've been part of the pandemic landscape here before, but it's the fact that they're all coming into effect so swiftly after the country had been virtually COVID-free. The small outbreaks over the past year had been effectively controlled with this system of restrictions and contact tracing. This time, they believe the outbreak is linked to the airport in Nanjing. That's where they think the Delta variant first entered the country. Now in Zhangjiajie, this is the tourist area that was made famous because it inspired parts of the Avatar films. It's been completely sealed. Residents can't leave, not even tourists can leave. China takes this zero tolerance approach to COVID, but the Delta variant is really testing that.
Let's go to NBC News Now correspondent Dasha Burns. She is following the latest headlines from NBCnews.com. What a terrific surprise, Dash. So glad to have you here.
Hey, Allison, great to see you. And we start with news from President Obama, former President Obama, who said today he's scaling back his 60th birthday party on Saturday due to a surge in coronavirus cases. Hundreds of people were expected to attend the event in Martha's Vineyard, but now it will be limited to only family and close friends. The former president's actual birthday is today. And in other birthday news, Meghan Markle turns 40 today. To celebrate, the Duchess of Sussex is launching a mentorship program for women re-entering the workforce. In a video with actress Melissa McCarthy, Markle made her first appearance since giving birth in June, announcing the 40x40 program. She's calling on 40 activists, athletes, and celebrities to spend 40 minutes mentoring women. Big names like Adele, Amanda Gorman, and Gloria Steinem have already signed on. Professional skateboarder Terry Kennedy has been charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors say the 36-year-old punched and kicked a man at a hotel in a Chicago suburb over the weekend. The victim then died from his injuries. Authorities say it's unclear what led up to the attack. Kennedy is known for his appearance in music videos with Snoop Dogg, video games, and TV shows. In Georgia, a former sheriff's deputy has been sentenced to 3 years in prison on gun charges. The sentencing comes after the deputy, Cody Richard Griggers, was also arrested during a probe into threats of political violence and extremism. Prosecutors say he used racist and extremist language in group texts, claiming he beat a black suspect and discussed killing liberal politicians. And at the Titanic Museum in Tennessee, a wall of ice collapsed, injuring at least 3 guests who were taken to the hospital, according to the owners. The museum was temporarily closed but has since reopened. The affected area has been blocked off, and the owners say it will take at least 4 weeks for the iceberg wall to be rebuilt. And Allison, I did a little research on this museum. I had no idea what it was, but it turns out you can actually go and shovel coal in the boiler room and also feel what 28-degree water feels like. So really quite the immersive experience there.
Yeah, just beware of the icebergs. And Dasha, since I know you've been doing your research, I just have one other question for you. With President Obama scaling back his birthday party, does that mean our invitations are still good, or are you and I no longer invited?
You know, I was a little busy, so I had to RSVP no to that one anyway, so.
Burn. All right, so I'll tell you about it on Monday.
We'll catch up over wine.
A Belarusian sprinter racing out of Japan, heading to Poland after an Olympic feud with her team at the Tokyo Games. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley has the latest on this ongoing international drama.
Yeah, Allison, I mean, there just keeps being more and more drama from these Olympics. And the latest we're hearing today is that Belarusian sprinter Kristina Szymanowskaja, she just landed from Tokyo in Vienna, Austria. And it's presumed or expected that later on today, she'll be boarding a flight and headed to Warsaw, Poland, where she'll reunite with her husband. Now, the Polish have given her and her husband special visas to basically allow them to live in Poland in exile, so they won't have to return to their native Belarus. Now, she was supposed to be flying direct from Tokyo to Warsaw, but at the last minute, the Belarusian activists in exile decided to warn her to try to change her mind and to divert her flight. Why? Well, it was only in May that actually Lukashenko, who's the head, the dictator of Belarus for a long time, he diverted an international flight in order to arrest an activist journalist who was on board. Now, this shocked the world, and so a lot of people assume that anything is possible when it comes to Lukashenko and his wrath, and that he could divert flights and decide to try to catch this sprinter himself, just as he did with this activist back in May. So this all started rather interestingly, because actually this is, of course, the Olympics, and the criticism from Szymanowskaja of the Belarusian government wasn't really political. She was accusing the management of the team, the coaches and other managers of essentially incompetence, of not getting the right COVID tests on time, of springing on her that she was going to be running in a relay race, which she hadn't really prepared for, and then kind of excluding her from the 200-meter race that's more or less her specialty. So she was angry, and she vented on social media, not in a really political way. But back home, back in Belarus, she was warned by her family that state media was saying that she was essentially a traitor. And she was warned in person over the weekend that there could be consequences should she try to return to Belarus. And so that's why she went to the Polish and tried to claim exile. Now, the future of her career, she says she wants to keep running. She's only 24 years old. So it's going to be a complicated process. But for now, it looks like she's safe.
It's time for the bottom line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. The big July jobs report is out Friday, but today we got to look at how private companies did with hiring last month, and it's not so great. ADP, the payroll company, puts out a monthly report, and it says that private companies added just 330,000 new jobs in July. We were looking for more than 650,000. The good news in there, though, the hospitality and leisure industry did the bulk of that hiring. We're talking restaurants, bars, movie theaters, sports venues, all bringing some workers back. The bad news, manufacturing and construction hiring, pretty weak. So what do we make of all this? Well, the markets aren't happy at all. The Dow closing down 323 points today, and this report was certainly a part of it. The concern is that Friday's jobs report, which includes government jobs too, will also disappoint. These two reports can be really different, but they have been pretty aligned during this pandemic. And the worry is that the Delta variant could be putting the brakes on our economic comeback. All right, one sector that's raging back louder and prouder than ever, live concerts. Ticketmaster says June was the fourth best month it has ever had as far as ticket volume goes. Live Nation, which owns Ticketmaster, saying this week that ticket prices are up and festivals are selling out. They're expecting more than 3 million music fans to go to festivals alone in the second half of this year, and they expect 2022 and 23 to be even better. Live Nation's already sold more than 25 million concert tickets for the back half of this year and 14 million for 2022. Sick with COVID, struggling with your mental health, putting your life on hold to maybe take care of someone in your family who's sick. A lot of us are dealing with those kinds of issues these days. And if you're in college, you might not get your tuition back if a personal problem forces you to drop out. CNBC senior personal finance correspondent Sharon Epperson is here now with some great advice for students. So, Sharon, I got to start with a really basic question here. Why are students on the hook for their tuition if they have to leave school, even for a medical reason? And how is COVID only making this worse?
Well, when you look at what most colleges have for their tuition refund policy, you're not able to get a refund after about 4 or 5 weeks of school. So if it happens a couple months in, then you are going to be out of luck. And the COVID situation has made it worse for many colleges and universities because they are, quite frankly, financially vulnerable at this time. They need students to be there, but they don't have the resources to give you back your money if you have to leave. One of the things we did in this, as I've been covering this, is talking to some key players in this industry, in the tuition insurance industry. And I talked to the CEO of GradGuard about what's going on here and why most schools will not give you a refund. This is what he had to say.
only 6% of universities, and most of those are graduate schools, provide a refund if a student has to withdraw for a legitimate reason. So if a death of a parent, for instance, if you get a concussion, if you get mono, if you get COVID, if you become seriously ill with anxiety or depression, universities are not in position today to provide refunds.
And that's where tuition insurance comes in. That is the insurance that you purchase that could cover your tuition as well as potentially your housing and your fees, as long as you have a legitimate medical or psychological reason for needing to withdraw from school. And a lot of folks are probably worried about what is the price of this going to be. Well, many schools partner with a third party like this company GradGuard or another company called AWG Doer, and they will provide it for you. But if you want to get it on your own, you can also do that through the GradGuard website.
All right, Sharon, I'm so glad you're here today because I've never even heard of tuition insurance. But as you've been saying, it's available. Parents and students can purchase it. Tell us more about how this works. Because I didn't know you wouldn't get your tuition back, and I didn't know that you wouldn't get that you could get tuition insurance. So I really am not so tuned into this one. We need you.
Well, it's like any other kind of insurance, right? It's trying to help you mitigate the risk of what if, and you're hoping that you're never going to have to use it. But if, in fact, you do have to use it, there is something there for you. I mean, the cost of what it could be for a $10,000 worth of coverage of tuition might cost you $106 or so using one of the GradGuard partner schools. That's what they've worked out. It may be a little bit more, maybe 2 to 5% of tuition, depending on the type of insurance that you get, where you get it from. But the most important thing is, since you didn't know what was covered and what wasn't, it's important to check with the college about what their tuition refund policy is. And if there really isn't one, then that's when you know you may need to get this type of insurance. We talked to Betterment's director of financial planning, and he said this about what you might get from tuition insurance.
Which tuition insurance you buy will dictate how much it will reimburse you, what costs you'll be reimbursed for. But I have seen some of them that will reimburse you up to 100%.
That's pretty great, right? So if you could get 100% of your money back, that it's worth that peace of mind for a lot of students and families.
So, Sharon, a lot of people might be thinking, right, okay, we've got this COVID situation that might be getting worse. If it does and colleges start going fully remote again, say a student wanted to withdraw from school because they don't have in-person classes, would tuition insurance cover something like that?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, this is not what one person described as dropout insurance. This is not allowing you to do that. You have to have a legitimate medical or mental health condition and a physician's note about that in order to place a claim and have this tuition insurance kick in.
Sharon Epperson helping to smarten us up so much today. Thank you for all of this useful information. Hopefully it helps some students out there who might be a little bit nervous about the year ahead. Really appreciate it. The bipartisan infrastructure package slowly making its way through the Senate. They are still debating amendments to that bill today. Senators have filed 300 amendments so far, but not all of them will get a vote. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell has the latest.
Hi, Allison. Well, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has warned Leader Schumer of cutting off debate and stopping the amendment process. McConnell says that if he does that, then he will not provide the 10 Republicans needed in order to pass this $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. And that seems to be what Schumer is doing. The Senate is in day 2 of voting on amendments. We expect that to continue into tomorrow as well. But the real question is how long this process is going to take, not if this legislation is going to pass. Things are very much on track to get the support of 50 Democrats and up to maybe 24 Republicans. We'll see how it plays out. But it's interesting because on Capitol Hill, while they're still focused on this bipartisan bill, all the talk is starting to look ahead to this $3.5 trillion partisan human infrastructure bill. Democrats are anxious to move on to that immediately after they get rid of this bipartisan bill. And Senate Republican leaders, including Leader McConnell, held a press conference just moments ago talking about that human infrastructure bill, saying that that is something they are adamantly opposed to. So this is this legislation, as far as the infrastructure bill is concerned, is likely to finish up Sunday, maybe Monday, but then Democrats are going to get right to work on what they really want to pass, which is this human infrastructure bill for child care, paid family leave, senior care, and a long list of Democratic priorities.
Former President Trump trying to block the Treasury Department from giving his tax returns to Congress. His lawyers saying the House Ways and Means Committee just wants to look for something embarrassing. That committee's been going after Trump's taxes for 2 years now. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joining me now from Washington, D.C. Pete, this isn't so different from the argument Trump and his team made back in 2019, an argument the Office of Legal Counsel agreed with, but then overturned last week. So what, if anything new, is the Trump team arguing now?
Well, I think they're really extending the arguments they've made before. They say the Democrats really have no legitimate legislative purpose here. They say, the Democrats do, that they want to see how the IRS audits presidential returns. But the Trump lawyers say the Congress has never in the past asked for any elected officials' returns, much less a current or former president, nor, they say, has Congress asked the IRS for information about how it audits presidents. So for that reason, they say there's no legitimate purpose, and that they say Congress doesn't have a general power to look for possible wrongdoing like a law enforcement agency does. Law enforcement agencies can subpoena documents for investigative reasons. The Trump lawyers say Congress can't, that the only power Congress has to get information is for legislative purposes. So that's their argument. And they also say that a president's documents, a president's personal records are something different than just an ordinary taxpayer.
So, Pete, where does this go from here, and how significantly could this delay, if not stop, the delivery of those returns?
Well, the Justice Department has yet to file, and it's due today, but today is a flexible term in the government. It could be any time up to midnight. They're supposed to file with the court a schedule for what they think, how this thing should play out. It just depends. I mean, if a judge initially rules against Trump and says this material has to be turned over, and then it is turned over to Congress, well, it's pretty hard to unring that bell. So if a judge, on the other hand, says no, or the judge rules yes, you have to turn it over, but I'm going to stay the effect of my ruling while it's appealed, well, that could stretch it out. It could, stretch out for another couple of years, I suppose. Or it could be turned over very quickly. It sort of depends on how the judge initially rules on this. And the government says, the Justice Department now says, the law is clear that if federal law says when any of the 3 tax writing committees ask for an individual's returns, the Treasury Department must hand them over. End of story. That you can't look behind the curtain and question Congress's motives, that the statutes, the black letter of the law is clear, they say.
Pete, if only we interpreted the word today so loosely in the news. Thank you so very much for your reporting today.
Okay.
Sirens, police tape, musicians playing string instruments, not your typical crime scene, but it is happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the Black String Triage Ensemble is bringing some calm to otherwise violent shootings. NBC News Now correspondent Maura Barrett has their unique story.
Another shooting on a Friday night in Milwaukee. Like many cities across the country, homicide rates have spiked here in the last year. But Milwaukee has something other cities don't, at least not yet.
The Black String Triage Ensemble is a group of Black and Latinx string players. They go to the site of shootings within about 2 to 2.5 hours of the event and play about a 30 to 40-minute concert at the scene and then leave.
David Hallman is the founder and music director of the ensemble.
They do this out of respect for people in the community, particularly Black and brown folks, who who have to deal with the trauma of a world and society that literally says you have no right to exist.
And how does music play into that?
I put together a program of 6 different pieces of music based off of the 5 stages of grief, with the 6th stage of faith included at the end.
It's become a weekly ritual for the group.
Everybody makes an agreement to be available, specific day, specific time period. Generally, we're all together in a space, and we are monitoring 911 situations as they arise. Yeah, we should go. And if there's one that seems to be a shooting, then we go to the scene.
Not ease muscles in my stomach before we really head out. I get that before we go, actually. But
you never know what we're going to encounter.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what we see a lot of. Yeah.
They quietly assess the situation before deciding to set up and play. The musicians, accompanied by Reverend Ron Ballou, their lead chaplain.
You call this a crime scene ministry.
Correct,
What
it
does
is.
that mean?
Basically, what we're trying to do is have some spiritual support and foundation in a situation that can be very chaotic. And that song that we were playing, that girl was singing right along. And she said, I have to know, they want to know what's coming up next.
It's very peaceful. Like, it brings back the peace, brings back the calmness, and like music calms me, so it's probably calming people.
In the immediate aftermath of a shooting, this is the only prescription. The mothers who have had children die from police violence, as I've been told, respect what we do, which is fantastic. That's excellent. But apparently so does law enforcement.
I just spoke with one of the officers on scene in charge, and he said we need to play more music, so it's calm.
And that is a very awkward position to be in.
How so?
We don't do this necessarily for law enforcement, but we realize that they're there, and they're burdened as well.
As the police pack up, so do the musicians. Often they'll have multiple calls in one night. As they wait, they reflect on what they experienced tonight.
It's kind of a pouring out when I go to these scenes, pouring out of all the music that I've had throughout the years, and it really feels good doing it to console people.
We can't be there to help people process in all the ways that they need to process, but we have this one skill as a group.
In that moment, in tomorrow's moment, and next weekend's, the ensemble will keep responding to promote peace and healing as shootings permeate the city.
How do we fix the hole in the soul of people? And how do we rewire the brain so that it thinks differently? Well, the answer is music.